Welcome to the Hud Grad Club. I'm Chris Webb, and I'm the Alumni Engagement Career Consultant with the University of Huddersfield's Careers Employability Service. And, full disclosure, I'm also a University of Huddersfield graduate. So I've generally got pretty positive things to say about both the institution and any of our graduates. But don't take my word for it. In this podcast, we'll be meeting different members of the University of Huddersfield's global alumni community, finding out what makes them tick, about their experiences during their time at the university and their career journeys since completing their studies. Join us as we explore the inspiring, innovative and diverse range of individuals that make up the Hud Grad Club. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Hud Grad Club podcast, and Nat, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Well, really good to have you with us. So if we've kind of got any people who are listening or sort of watching the podcast at the moment and maybe don't know you already, can you tell us a little bit more about what you did at the university and what you're kind of currently up to now?
Yes, so whilst I was at the university, I was studying an integrated master's in social work. So I started that in 2018 and finished in 2021. But then I had a year as president from 2021 to 2022. That was a great year. And then now I'm a management consultant at EY.
Fantastic. Well, we'll talk a little bit more as well about your presidency of the Students' Union, because that's a really big thing for us to cover during the podcast. But we start every episode, as always, with our greatest Hud story ever told section. So this is very much kind of give you an opportunity to think back, cast your memory back, reflect on your time at the university and any kind of special memories you have of that time. And it sounds like there might be quite a few. So what is your kind of story, or what is your key memory you'd like to share on the podcast?
I think it relates to the Students' Union. So I took part in a lot of different societies and sports clubs. So I first joined cheerleading in my second year. And this was a really good opportunity for me as I didn't do any sport previously, and it enabled me to make friends, which was obviously great. And then following that, the year after, I created a self-improvement society. This was really key as this was when COVID was happening. So a lot of people felt isolated and that they wasn't going out with their friends. So this was amazing. I got to learn a lot about myself and what I can do to support my well-being, my career, and stuff like that. And then following that, I think probably my biggest highlight was running for president and doing that for a year. Obviously, again, because of COVID, this was done online. So I had to learn how to engage with people online using social media. And that's definitely really helped me in my current role. But in terms of my course, doing social work, I think my favourite part was probably the placement. I did learn a lot of theory in my first and second year, but the third year was my placement, which is where it all came together. And this really helped me put what I'd learned into practice.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know we're going to kind of cycle back to talk a bit more about the placement and how your course kind of led you on to what you're doing now, because it is quite an interesting transition, I think, for people kind of who typically study your subject. But I guess just to come back to the sort of the presidency of the Students' Union really briefly, I mean, I think it's probably fair to say that kind of being a SAB officer or being a SU president is a role that not that many people understand if they haven't done it. It's, it's really quite unique. And I think, as an experience, I guess, is something that only a few people get to say they've done. So, I mean, can you reflect a bit more on I guess, that experience, particularly during COVID? What was that like, to do that role so all-encompassing during a period that was, I guess, really challenging for everybody?
Yeah, so as I mentioned before, like when I applied for the role, it was COVID kind of shut down everything. So I campaigned online. So I didn't really know what to expect as a year as president if I was successful. I didn't know whether university was still going to be online and there wasn't going to be anyone on campus. But luckily, by the time I got in office, we were back in person. So, I mean, I wouldn't even know how to start explaining it. Really is such a big role and there's so many responsibilities to go with it. But it really did help me see university from a different perspective. there's so much that goes on behind the scenes, and you're really not aware of it as a student. But I think the team that I work with is great. I think they really made the year and helped me to achieve all my goals, which in turn helped all the students at the university get a better experience. And it's great now because I can still see the changes are ongoing at the university, and I feel like I've definitely made a lasting legacy, which is exactly what I wanted. I wanted to create positive change, and yeah, that's happened.
That's brilliant. And obviously, yeah, he's still giving back now, sort of supporting us with the podcast, which is brilliant. And I mean, tell us a little bit more then about that kind of that transition, I suppose, because you mentioned obviously you know completed the degree sort of over that kind of 2018-21 period, but of course were then still connected with the university through 21-22 as SU president. So how has that kind of transition been, I guess, from sort of finishing the degree, going into that sort of presidency, and now sort of into the role that you're at with EY?
Yeah, so I think initially I wasn't sure whether I wanted to do my master's year, as I didn't really know if social work was for me. So after my placement, I realised that I couldn't help people in the way that I wanted to, because there was a lot of barriers in play. For example, paperwork, lack of funding, lack of staff. So I kind of looked at different things that could give me like a year, like a stopgap to kind of think and say, you know, what do I want to do? And presidency was really key to that. It gives you that year to gain skills. But I think my course prepared me really well. I had a lot of modules such as communication and interacting with service users, which helped me in my year as presidency. But at the same time, as a student, you know, you're often your timetables, you wake up late, you can do your uni work in the middle of the night if you want to. The transitioning from, you know, that to a 9 to 5 was quite hard. I was just tired, really. But I did adjust to it, and after a while, it did seem to feel normal. So once I finished my year as presidency, halfway through it, I still didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I knew that the skills that I'd learned whilst at university and as presidency will come in handy no matter what I decide. So I had a lot of meetings with the career service, and they really helped me to look at potential careers and look at the areas which I feel strongly about. But I think one of the things which I struggled with was a lot of the roles which I was looking at for various different companies, various different sectors. A lot of them wasn't in like the Northwest, and they wasn't in Yorkshire. So I had to look further afield, and I think that is really scary because, I mean, originally I'm from Lancashire and I moved to Huddersfield, so I was an hour away from home. So moving even further away from home, you know, I didn't know what to expect. And now I've ended up in Edinburgh, so I'm quite far away from home and quite far away from Huddersfield. But that took quite a lot of adjusting as well, because house hunting in an area which you don't know, and just taking a bet really on the area is quite challenging. But and I forgot to mention that in between that, I also did an internship in customer service and sales at City and Guilds, which was in Wakefield. To be honest, one of the main reasons I did this was to just get some financial income during that period between presidency and joining EY. But I do regret not doing internships in the summer between my years at universities. It really did help me learn a lot about customer service and sales. I've never worked in a vast office environment before, and I realised that I really like sales, which I didn't expect. So
I mean, it sounds like it's been a hugely kind of busy few years, particularly like over the last few years for you now. And I mean, it's interesting what you said there about, I guess, you know, that sort of journey you've taken to the job that you're in now, because, you know, we talk a lot about it in the Careers Employability Service, obviously, in terms of the fact that, you know, many degrees are can be very non-linear in the sense of where people go from them. You know, it's not always kind of a, you know, direct vocational pathway. But I think, as you were saying, you know, kind of going from social work into kind of management consultancy, isn't necessarily always the most well-trodden path. So, you know, what was it, I guess, that kind of steered you in that direction, or when you sort of realized, okay, this might be something where I can apply all the skills and knowledge from the degree I've done, but take it in a slightly different direction?
I think initially I just remained extremely open. So I made it clear to myself that I've got a degree and a lot of careers are open to people of any degree. And I think a lot of the time, graduates and people in their final years don't necessarily realise that. So I was looking on various websites such as Bright Network and the university's careers website to see what grad schemes are available to graduates of all disciplines. And there were so many, it was very hard to kind of whittle through them. But then I stumbled across the EY's consulting grad scheme, and the specific line that I'm in is people advisory services. So I'm advising the workforce on how to basically improve their people. So as soon as I saw that, I thought, okay, well, there's some correlations with my course. I did social work. It was all about people and how to help improve people. So I kind of thought, okay, well, there's some similarities here. And then I looked into the values of the organisation and kind of things that it's done in the past. And I thought, well, these align to me personally. And I can evidence some of these because I've done placement at university, or I've set up a society, or I've become president. I think all of those things combined, I don't think there was one specific moment where I thought, okay, I want to be a management consultant. It was just, I just stumbled across the role. And I mean, I also applied for a lot of different other graduate programs as well, but this one definitely stuck out to me. And I think as well, the location did help. I mean, originally I applied for EY in the Manchester office, but by the time I got through the application process, it was full. So they offered me Birmingham, Bristol, Edinburgh. And I think that's what swung it, really. I got offered other graduate schemes in my local area. For example, there was one in Blackburn. And I thought, no, I do actually want to change location, which, well, I never thought I'd do that, to be honest. I thought I'd want to stay at home, but that wasn't the case.
And I mean, I guess, you know, the gambles, or not even gambles, but, you know, the leaps you'd taken in previous things had worked out for you. So, I mean, it sounds like, you know, you were kind of, all of that sort of prepared you to, you know, take that leap to somewhere different, even if it was a little bit kind of, yeah, as you said, daunting to begin with. And I mean, really interesting what you were saying there, I think, a really important point about that idea of, you know, not waking up one day and thinking, I want to be a management consultant. You know, I think you're absolutely right. I think there's a tendency for people to do that, to think that, you know, one day I will just wake up and I'll know exactly the job title that I'll be doing, you know, at some point in my career. And so I think it's really good to challenge that. And you've also mentioned some excellent stuff there, I think, in terms of, I guess, the benefits of experience and getting different experiences and how that's helped you. Have there been kind of any other sort of key things that you felt really prepared you well, I guess, for where you're at now at the kind of early stage of your career?
I think getting involved with as many things as I could at university. I know that COVID did impact that quite a lot, but just trying out new things, interacting with as many people as possible, and just taking all the opportunities you can. That really helped me as I kind of figured out what bits I did like and what bits I didn't like. I don't know, like, for example, with placement, I realised that I hate filling out paperwork. So I wanted to work in a less bureaucratic place than what I was. Yeah, I'm really grateful for Huddersfield. There's so many opportunities at university, and my advice is just take all of them, as well as get your uni work done.
Excellent. I know we're going to give you a chance to give a bit of a shout out to some Huddersfield people a little bit later on. But I think just to kind of come back really quickly, I know one of the other things that you're a really big advocate of is networking, which I know, you know, for a lot of people can be kind of quite daunting, and, you know, strikes fear into people of being in kind of crowded rooms with lukewarm coffee and handshakes and all that sort of stuff. But I know you've mentioned before that the kind of networking kind of prior to finishing uni was something that really helped you in terms of where you're up to now.
Yeah, definitely. I think it helped me to become part of societies and to set up my own society, because that way you're interacting with people, especially online. It was COVID times. And then when I was running for president, I had to set up various social media accounts. So that helped to kind of boost who I was interacting with. But I think the main platform which I use quite a lot now, and I did at university, was LinkedIn. So when I was applying for various grad schemes, including EY, I built my connections, I connected with people at EY, and I reached out to them asking them questions about the application process, about their roles. And this really helped me, as otherwise you don't really know what it's like. You can see it on paper, but it might be completely different in practice. And funnily enough, one of the first person that I reached out to at EY, I work with them on a daily basis, and they're actually based in Edinburgh, which is really unexpected. But it's really good. You can connect with people and build relationships with people that you ordinarily wouldn't come in contact with. And I think that's really important. As for example, if I'm in a room of people and there's a lot of people there, sometimes I feel like, oh, I don't really want to speak to them. But if you go into a room of people and you've already connected with 5 of them on LinkedIn and spoke to them, it makes that process a lot easier to do.
Yeah, and I think, you're absolutely right there. And a lot of people perhaps, I think, sometimes feel that on LinkedIn, people might not be interested in connecting, but it's actually surprising, isn't it, how accommodating people are and how interested people are to hear from others on the platform.
Yeah, definitely. I remember when I was messaging people on LinkedIn, and I sent out a lot of messages, basically the same message over and over again, but the majority of people did reply, and some people don't. And I'd say that's one of my biggest suggestions, is if you reach out to people and they don't reply, don't be offended, just carry on reaching out. You can maybe tweak your message a little bit, personalize it to what's on their profile, and people will get back to you because they want to help you. And the point of that network is to connect people professionally.
Yeah, absolutely. As you say, people such a valuable kind of resource in your career. And on that note, I guess it's probably quite a good time to sort of ask you, are there any kind of key people, or have there been any key people in your career so far you'd like to give a shout out to on the podcast?
Yeah, so I'd probably say, first of all, Jo Timmins and Claire Idegon from the Careers Service. So I first had an appointment with Jo in my first or second year, and I continued that relationship with her, having careers appointments monthly or bi-monthly. And she really helped me to understand myself, really, in terms of what I want in a career, and she helped to motivate me. And she said, I can tell you're going to be successful no matter what you do. She really helped to steer me in the right direction. And then Claire, she was great. So I worked with Claire a lot when I was SU president. One of my aims was to help students professionally and to improve the career service. So I ran a lot of focus groups with students about their experience of the career service. I fed that back to Claire, and there were so many changes that were made, and she was so keen to work with us. And I know that relationship has been maintained with the SU now, which is absolutely great. And then another key figure is definitely Bob Cryan, Vice Chancellor. So as a student, I didn't have any interaction with him. I don't think I even knew who he was, to be honest. But as president, I had quite a close relationship with him. I think sometimes it was hard because almost in meetings, the SU's on one side and the university's on the other, and sometimes you've got to challenge the university on certain matters. But he's been a great figure, and I know now I can email him and he'll get back to me within a couple of days of any advice or anything that I need.
It's fantastic, Nat. And as you say, that legacy that you've left there is still really strong. Certainly, I can speak from personal experience here between the kind of career service and the SU, which not always replicated at universities, and as you said, so important in terms of making sure that there's genuine student voice in improving services, and it's not just kind of a tick box exercise. So that's fantastic, and thanks for sort of sharing those reflections with us. We kind of come sort of towards the end of the podcast now, and as always, we like to kind of conclude with a section we call underrated careers advice, which is all about finding out if there been any kind of nuggets of wisdom you've sort of picked up on your career journey so far, or kind of key bits of advice you think would have been useful when you were a student, or are particularly useful maybe for current students or graduates to know about. So is there any kind of underrated careers advice you'd like to share with us today?
Yeah, so I think the biggest one relates to imposter syndrome, and don't feel like an imposter, whether that's at university or when you're applying for graduate roles. because I know a lot of the time some big employers often pick graduates from Russell Group universities who've had a very privileged background, but don't let that stop you, because you can be that voice in the room that wouldn't be there because you've had that different experience at university. And you should definitely challenge this. I know some of the roles I applied for, it said that you need to come from an established red brick university. Well, I applied regardless of not coming from a red brick university. It doesn't mean anything. You've got as much skills, or even maybe more than someone from a what they call an established university. So definitely challenge that, and don't let that stop you applying or make you feel like you're not good enough, because you 100% are.
Oh, yeah, very, very passionate, inspiring words then. And I think it's interesting, actually, now we're seeing with some of the graduate schemes that are coming through, how employers are kind of trying to change that narrative in terms of making them degree blind or institution blind, removing things like the requirement for 2-1s and all that sort of stuff. And you're absolutely right that judging people on their merits as opposed to the name next to where they studied and all those sort of things is a good development, a positive development. But as you say, also really important to stress that you are enough. And as you said, in some cases, many more skills than perhaps other people would identify as having. So brilliant advice, and a great kind of note to finish the podcast on. Nat, thanks so much for joining us today. If we have kind of students or graduates who are watching this who are maybe interested in getting in touch with you or reaching out, where's the best place to find you?
Definitely on LinkedIn, because I'm on there on a daily basis. Feel free to connect, to follow me, to message me. I will reply and give you any guidance that you need. So my full name is Natalie Stuart. Feel free to connect with me on there. I've also got an Instagram which is dedicated to my professional journey, which I set up after university. So the name is @NatalieStuart2022. So feel free to connect with me on there as well.
Oh, brilliant. A great offer of support there. We will make sure that those kind of ping up on the screen at the bottom of the screen when we kind of get the full edit of the podcast out. But that's a really nice note for us to sort of finish on. So Nat, thanks so much for joining us. Thanks for becoming another member of the Hud Grad Club. And obviously we wish you well for everything in the future at EY and beyond.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's been great.
Take care. All the best. Enjoyed the podcast? Then go to the University of Huddersfield YouTube channel for all of our future episodes. Subscribe, like, and don't forget to hit the bell button for notifications. If you'd like to be involved in the Hud Grad Club podcast moving forward, please get in touch with us on alumni@hud.ac.uk.